Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, From Insight to Impact, How Stellantis Financial Services Recovered $6.2 million with AI-powered conversation intelligence. We are joined by our speakers, Shaq from Observe and Lamar from Stellantis, and we have a really exciting conversation ahead of us today. But before we jump into it, I just want to do some housekeeping rules and regulations before we get started. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to throw them into the Q&A section on the right side of your screen. All of your mics will be off during this session. It is being recorded, and we will be sending the recording and any additional resources out after the webinar. I will pass it over to you, Shaq, to take things away.
Awesome. Thanks, Maddie. Hey, everyone. Farhan Shakil here, go by Shaq, Director of Customer Success here at Observe AI, and had the privilege of partnering closely with Stellantis as they transform their collections and operations. And what you're about to hear is not just a story of AI adoption, but really a story of alignment, strategy, and measurable business impact. So really excited to dive in. And I'm joined by Lamar Nevels. Lamar, would you like to maybe give an introduction of yourself and tell us a little bit about Stellantis?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. I'm glad to be here today. I've been in the industry now as far as call center for over 26 years. I've been with my current organization for over 18 years now. Started off in customer service, then I ventured off into collections. My journey here at Stellantis, I started off as a collector, then I was a frontline manager, managing early stage delinquency. Then I moved to late stage delinquency where I was managing that for a good bit of time. Then I transitioned and became our dialer manager. So I was managing dialer workforce. Then I had the opportunity to move out to Houston about 11 years ago and start up our Houston Collection Center there. From there, I moved into operation manager where I got to build my team there in Houston. Then I was promoted to director of collections where I've been for a great period of time. So now what I oversee is all of our support areas is all under my umbrella. So everything from dialer workforce, reporting analytics, collection QC, customer assistance team, and they all fall under my umbrella and my purview. So I'm also responsible for all system implementations in our department. So I've got a lot of experience, and it's been a great journey working with you guys over at Observe AI. Just to give you a little bit about Stellantis and who we are. Stellantis Financial Services and who we are. We were acquired back in 2021 by Stellantis. So we became their captive auto finance company. So we went to become a captive finance company for the 5th largest auto manufacturer in the world. So if you're familiar with brands like Jeep, Ram, Dodge, Chrysler, Maserati, Alfa Romeo, those are just a few of the brands that we support and we have at the organization. In collections, we service retail loans, lease loans, and also business accounts as well. So, our focus is we really are focused in on customer experience and the journey throughout their life cycle. We want the customers coming back to us. We want them to love the product and love the service that we provide for them. So as a newer captive, it's been quite the journey as we've been growing. In our department alone, we've increased over 400% in the last 3 years when it comes to staff and our growth. You're looking at technology updates, enhancements to policies and procedures, a lot more automation. It's been extremely exciting for us over the last 3.5 years as we've been growing as a captive company. So with that, you also deal with a lot of growing pains and the needs to have even tighter controls around everything that we do. So I think that's what really started our journey and us looking into Observe, because we were very interested at the time into the auto QA. So, and because we knew we were scaling at a very, very fast rate, and we needed to make sure that we had proper QC in place to really have controls and our arms around everything that was going on as we were growing as an organization. So that's kind of what started our journey.
Love that. Love that. Love that. And thanks for the, just the background there. I think, supporting so many well-known brands and just the, the expansiveness of the operation that you have, Lamar, right, in terms of collections. I think for the first part of this, really want to start to understand some trends, right, that are going on in the industry. And the way that you all are at Stellantis have been able to position yourselves to not only be a force to leverage or to understand the data, but to leverage it in a really powerful way. So can you just talk to us a little bit about, how you collaborate with other departments, right? And how you're able to use that to enhance the customer experience?
Yeah, as we've been growing, that was one thing that's extremely important for us as an organization. As a leadership team, we converse often, we meet often. It's important because for one, we're learning, we're getting to know each other. We're also learning the products together. And we have to depend on each other, right? Because we're one organization and we all have our responsibilities to the business. So the one thing we do a great job of is we have our company QC department. We collaborate on a lot of topics as it relates to product and customer satisfaction. Existing processes, procedures, they're always under review. We're always trying to enhance and make things better. We've established a collection QC group and we partner directly with our company QC team and also our issue management team to try to identify things that are going on, to gain insights, to make sure that we're making the proper changes for improvement. We're constantly auditing our processes, procedures, our system functionality, adherence to things that we should be hearing at the desk with our associates. That's just one of the areas that we partner with. One thing that we've been able to do with Observe is we've really been able to gain insights that's helped us collaborate also with our training team. As we talk about ways to improve training and just the onboarding experience, getting those insights has allowed us to really understand where the area of focus needs to be in training and also in our nesting environment before our team is comfortable at hitting the production floor. One of the things that we're always focused on is centering it around improving customer experience and collections, but also providing convenience and flexibility to our customers. One of the things that's important is we have to allow them to have an easy way to make payments, be able to get information, be able to communicate with us in various ways when they have needs or concerns. So really a big focus for us has been around digital communication. That's extremely important to us. Also, outside of digital communication, self-serve platforms, allowing the customer to be able to self-serve and not have to call into the call center, because you have certain, when you think about your consumer, it's all about convenience in this day and age. Sometimes you don't want to talk to a person. You just may want to be able to just log into an app, get information, make a payment, ask a question, get back some information that you need. By doing that, it takes a lot of pressure off of the call center. So it allows us to really have more in-depth conversations with our customers that are in difficult situations as we try to reach out to them and help them resolve their situation. So that's really been a focus for us as an organization.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the way that you're talking about, there's the cross-functional operational departments, but I think a lot of times, people don't think to link these insights back to training, right? Because it is how you bring everyone in. It's how you start the whole process. So I love that. I think that was one of the unique things about the way you all approached it. It was a full closed loop cycle, right? It was like, hey, we're not just going to do this coaching after the fact or, these improvements after the fact. We're also going to put it into our training so that our new hires can really onboard and ramp up effectively. Right. And, I think when it comes to deflecting conversations or, making giving insights back to the business, like you said, some people are just in that self-service mode now, right? They want to get through what they need to go to and they don't always want to talk to someone. But being able to understand what your calls are about and then, hopefully inform what else to make self-serve is really, really impactful. So, and thinking about that, I think that's where, the insights piece becomes a really key part of what customers are looking for. But outside of that, like, and even outside of just like, the AI and the contact center technology, what are some of the evolving needs of your business, right? As you mentioned the 400% growth, there's a lot of that going on right now. What are some of the needs of your business and how you're looking at technology moving forward?
More automation, streamlining our process even more to be more efficient, faster at what we're doing. Those are always gains for us that we're always looking for as we try to improve. One of the things that I know that Observe has given us, especially with Auto QA, is allowed us to evaluate 100% of our calls. So we can always get insights into how our team is adhering to our procedures and how policies and how we're talking and communicating with our consumers. We've also partnered, one of the things that we did is we partnered. When we first started this process, I heard about Observe AI, and I was loving the auto QA. I was like, okay, that's going to take a lot of relief of our team and give us more coverage. But I don't think I really, until we got into it, I don't really think I started to understand the power of what you can do if you put it together the right way. So one of the things I know we did in the very beginning is we partnered. We sat down first internally and we reevaluated all of our QC questions and the things that we want to evaluate from our staff. Then we got together and we really partnered and we really got an understanding of what could be leveraged in Observe AI as far as auto QA and what still had to be manual. So we spent a lot of time looking at our questions, and questions that were just, a yes or no. Those are easy to be able to put into the system. The fact that you can also couple that with metadata made it a lot easier for us to really take a lot of our questions and put a lot of them in auto QA. And that's given us a lot more coverage, a lot more insight into what's kind of going on. So when we talk about having department huddles or having meetings with our team or reinforcing things through ongoing training, it's given us that insight. I've been able to have conversations with our training team to say, hey, let's look into maybe stressing this a little bit more in training, or on the floor with our existing team, we may see an opportunity and we can have a quick huddle to reinforce a topic. That's been very valuable for us. One of the things that I know we introduced was screen recording, and our team is really loving that because it's allowed our leaders to actually see things through the perspective of our agents. So it's been great when we're trying to coach and develop, especially when you're trying to onboard newer associates that still may not feel comfortable navigating through the system and getting information. Now that we can really see what they see, we've been able to provide even more detailed coaching and training to not only improve the customer's experience, but it improves the agent experience as well. And that's key, and that's key focus for us as well.
Yeah, so. Love that. And you said so many beautiful things in that sentence. I think one of the key things that stuck out to me is the ability to really leverage the auto QA from the jump, right? I think you mentioned looking at the questions and being able to unlock the power of auto QA. I think in the industry right now, a lot of folks think of it as, hey, we had a QA process before, let's put in automation and we'll be able to, scale our QA process. But really it's insights at scale, right? It's 100%. And if you correlate it to outcomes and you understand that this is driving an outcome, you actually have a really unique ability and you're uniquely positioned to be that strategic partner for the rest of your business, because now you can say, hey, like a collections rate, like we see here on the screen, right, with the 6.2 million recovery, right? If we're looking at correlating the things that we're measuring in auto QA to a collection rate KPI or a North Star metric, you're going to be able to drive these things really effectively. And I think that was something where, being able to partner, really understand what mattered, what was important to bring out was key in this, right? And I think that was an incredible feat. Before we jump into some more on auto QA, because I do have some other stuff we want to talk about there, I want to zoom out a little bit and just understand from your perspective, right? Any significant shifts that you've felt in the financial sector or the automotive industry? How does your organization feel the impact, and kind of what are the biggest challenges that are facing you or impacting you in your operations today?
Yeah, it's always product customer satisfaction, but you also have that other element, right, which can be economic uncertainty that can have an impact, especially on collections, because you can have more customers that are becoming past due just because they're uncertain about what's going to happen with the economy. So that's when it becomes extremely important, especially we're in a time where that's happening, but you also have growth that's still happening. So we're constantly hiring new associates that are coming aboard. So it's important that they always stay equipped with the tools and information needed to help our customers, because as they run into real life situations and difficulty with making their payments, our job is to help support them, get them back on track with their loan. We want their recurring business. We want them to stay with Stellantis forever. If you're a Jeep brand enthusiast, we want you in that Jeep and always buying Jeeps. So that's important for us. And, helping our customers get through their situations is very key for us. But that starts with really training our team and really providing them with the tools to be able to do their jobs effectively.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Awesome. So yeah, let's talk about AutoQA a little bit more, right? I think the initial goal always is let's create that efficiency at scale, right? We have the base problem that most quality centers face, which is we're only looking at 1 to 2% of our calls, right? And we're taking business action based off of that 1 to 2% of data, right? So for AutoQA, how can we get it at scale, but then also free up some of the bandwidth for our human talent, right? Our people to do the more subjective things, the more hard-hitting things, and truly make the change from being just a quality audit center, right? Focus on hitting a quota of audits to a quality center, right? Now we're focused on improving quality overall. So, when it came to the scale of the insights, and I think you mentioned, just how it gave you some unintended, or really beneficial things that you weren't expecting, right? Can you talk a little bit about that and the efficiency you were able to see?
Yeah, just building moments alone, we've had other phone systems where, you can actually look at keywords and phrases. The thing that I fell in love with was the ability to be able to take keywords and phrases from what the customer is saying and also what the agent is saying, and having logic where you can create a scenario or a moment that you can evaluate and tag to your interaction. So for us, that's been very valuable. I'll give you an example. In collections, if we have a customer that's filing bankruptcy, it's important that our agents ask for key information. So we've actually been able to take a moment and we turned it into almost like it's an adherence moment where we look and we listen to what the customer is saying. And if they mention that they're in the process of filing bankruptcy, they have an attorney, we're also listening to our agents asking for certain information. If we don't hear that, that gets tracked in a moment. And what our team does is I have my QC team where we evaluate that moment. So if we ever come across a scenario where that's potentially has happened, the team is listening to that on an assignment. So anytime those pop up within a few days, they're immediately listening to those calls to be able to give feedback. If we need to get back in touch with the customer to get that information, we can take action and do that. That's just been one of the ways we've been able to use moments to help us capture and tag interactions. So that's been very valuable. You couple that with AutoQA, it gives you a bigger range of scope to be able to have really tight controls around what's going as you grow in your organization. So that's been extremely valuable for us.
That's a beautiful point. I think the aspect of being able to actually use your quality team as like a tiger team almost, right? It's, hey, we're not focused on just doing X amount of audits, right? If we come across these things, and I think you even spoke about how, your QC team works really closely with, your operations teams, your training team. So they're kind of that catalyst for all the insights within the business. If they're coming across these other things that, need to be looked at from a compliance perspective or anything like that, they're going to be called out and you can action on it right away, right? And it's a different way to leverage that group of individuals who really know your conversations better than anyone else in the organization, right? So I think that's a beautiful thing to be able to leverage them there.
We were able to do that through you guys. I mean, I can say in the very beginning, our partnership has really been valuable because I think we've really spent a lot of time learning from each other. We've been able to provide input to how things are kind of set up and say, hey, it would be great if we had this thing to help us even further. And the one thing I do love is the fact that once we actually give a suggestion or feedback, you guys have come back real quick and say, that's in the lab right now. That's actually being implemented soon. So that's been very great to see that the feedback is being taken and actually actioned on by you guys as well. Because like I said, when we first partnered, we went through setting up the AutoQA. Then once we got that configured, we felt really good about where we were. Then I know we were doing, I think, our cloud migration at that point. And that's when you guys brought up about the fact that we can actually start appending metadata. You had a process where we can start feeding metadata into the system to be processed for every interaction. So for us, I think once we learned that, that ended up becoming a game changer for us, because not only were we able to listen to calls, but we were also able to put key business data in there as well. Like if I wanted to focus on listening to interactions where we had a vehicle that was out for repossession and we had a customer contacting us wanting to try to save their loan, we could easily listen to those conversations and see if there's areas to improve upon. If I wanted to target looking at high balance loans, high risk loans, we were able to do that and listen to and get those insights for what's happening on the calls. So it's been very valuable having that metadata. So as I kind of look back on it, once we implemented that, that's when we started seeing even bigger gains and bigger insights into what was going on, and it allowed us to take even further action. So that's definitely been a game changer for us, is starting to get that metadata as well in our phase 2 approach. So
yeah, that's a key point of emphasis, I think, for a lot of the supercharged organizations, right? Is, when you have that CRM data, you have your conversational data, you're appending it together, right? And you're really starting to get the full landscape of your customer journey. I think a lot of the times, when businesses are transforming, not understanding that it's an intelligence layer, right? So if you don't have the data layer underneath it to inform the intelligence layer, it becomes very tough for it to get to that proactive state, like you said, right? So I think there's that learning that a lot of businesses go through. But to your point, as soon as we got it in, it was like, open season in terms of all the analysis we wanted to do. I think that's when we were like, oh man, we got to do these business reviews a little bit more often. Like we have to start, looking at some different ways that we're going to slice and dice this, because there were just so many opportunities. But I think that's where the partnership really came in, because we were able to talk about and prioritize, right? Like what are the most important areas, which really flew into how we started to look at collections, right? And just jumping into kind of the next thing here, right? When we look at collections overall, and again, I think a lot of the times people tend to think auto QA is separate. You have that whole piece of your business and your quality side of the business, but quality should be linked to all of your outcomes, right? And you shouldn't have to sacrifice quality in order to increase certain outcomes or KPIs, right? So the ability for us to partner on that and look at it holistically, I think was very powerful. But I think this collections work that we were able to do was really unique. And I think when we got the metadata in, we had that initial business review, I think sometime in July, and then we started to really look at the data differently. So why don't you talk a little bit about how we started that process, and just how that I think that review actually specifically was really beneficial, because we started to have a really productive conversation in the room with multiple stakeholders to say, whoa, there's something going on here, right?
Yeah, I think for us, we started feeding CRM data, EDW data, telephony data. So I think once we did that, we started saying, I think you guys asked the question, what's important for you guys right now? And we talked about performance. We talked about being more effective at the desk, with us having the growing pains of a lot of newer associates who are still getting acclimated and learning, like some of our associates that have been here for many years. So I think when we partnered and we started looking at the information, and we really sat down and really started giving you insights into what that data meant to us, that's where the partnership began. And I think that's when we first did our first look at the quartiles. We started looking at bottom performers based on finishing codes or outcome codes, or whatever you want to call it in your organization. We started looking at the outcome codes, and we really started saying, okay, let's set this up in quartiles. Let's start looking at our bottom performers, our top performers, our middle performing, our associates that are performing at an acceptable level. Let's start seeing what the differences are in that. And I think once we got together and we were able to mix that data together, we started seeing, and you guys helped us provide that insight into, hey, look, your top performers are taking a little bit more ownership on their calls. They're probing and asking more questions, insightful questions when they're talking to their customers. That's really some of the differences that we're seeing there. So When we kind of looked at that, we said, okay, this is some of the things that we kind of knew, but not probably not having that level of insight to it. So we started saying, okay, let's start listening to even more calls. Let's start doing more focusing around how we train. Is there things that we can adjust or put more emphasis on in the classroom? So I think when we started doing that and we started talking with our operation managers, our frontline managers, our team leads about what the focus needed to be, everybody was able to focus in on that even more, because once you start having that metadata and observe from the top down, it really allowed us at every level to put a focus, a targeted focus on interactions and listening to key calls and be able to give insightful feedback to our staff to help them improve. So I think for that was probably by getting the metadata, it allowed us to take a more targeted approach. I remember my days as a frontline manager, I would have to look at our wrap-up codes or disposition codes and say, okay, let me listen to a lot of these no promise calls and really try to figure out if I can figure out where they're
generating hypotheses, right?
Yeah, it's random and it's not as targeted or specific as it could be. So once we started getting metadata, it allowed us to be able to really hone in on a specific situation, and a customer in a certain account status or in a certain level of delinquency, and really start getting an understanding of how we're handling that customer and how we're interacting, and are we really asking the right questions to guide them, to get them back on track. And I think once we started seeing a lot more of that information and those insights easier at every level, especially our frontline managers, they were able to take the action, give the feedback to the staff, couple that with looking at our KPI information, gradually seeing those improvements, enforcing those improvements, celebrating those improvements, and just continue reinforcement. And that's what led to our improvements that we saw.
Yeah, that's a powerful example. And for those listening in, right, I think the data there is playing such a key role, but the focus is huge. And essentially it's a validation, right? Like, I think a lot of times in business, you might have other mechanisms like a survey, which you're only getting on a percentage of your calls in terms of feedback, or you have different user metrics and things like that you're looking at to make a story. But the conversation data and agent performance, right, whether it's within that agent performance bucket, whether it's in the process bucket or technology bucket, it's really the validation of, hey, this is actually happening, right? This is what the gap is. And I think the quartile has really helped us understand what is the thing that we should focus on. Because even businesses, say they want to focus on X, Y, and Z, but if the opportunity that lies within the data is more pertinent in one area, that's the area we should focus on, right? It's not something that we should just, and that's how you can help it inform you, but make sure that it's still correlated to a KPI that is going to drive performance. And yeah, that was really powerful in terms of identifying that opportunity. But then, that's just one part of it, right? Then the second part is part of the partnership, which is, the SFS team had to go and do something with that data, right? It's like, okay, great. Now we know that there's a gap. This is, I think a lot of businesses say, okay, cool. Thanks for the data. Can you actually, slice it this way? Can you actually correlate it to this other thing? I want to see how it looks here. But they don't realize that there's a gap that could be 6 million in, collections left on the table, that if you don't do anything about it, it's just going to sit there, right? And you just want to slice and dice the data more, right? So I think that's where the credit to your team and your operation to be able to say, okay, we're going to go and actually action on it. And I think that's where we started to see the lift in the collection rate.
Yeah, and when I go back, I actually went back, as we were preparing for the webinar today. I kind of look back at when we first started our journey. Then I look back at when we introduced the metadata. And the one thing I saw was, you see the correlation of us actually getting that data, doing evaluations, providing the feedback, doing follow-ups, taking action at every level. We had a 10%, over the course of the last year, we've had a 10% increase in our promise to pay rate, 2% lift in our KEP rate. Average payment size has increased, our CEV has increased, and all that relates to dollars collected. Balances moved. That's more customers that we were able to help and get them out of their situation and get them back on track with their loan. So that was a win for us, key win for all of us. So we appreciate your partnership with that.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I think that comes from a product of the focus, but then also just, your operation and how that goes. And actually, Lamar, can you talk a little bit about just double clicking into that more, like the connectivity that you have? What kind of change management did you have to go through when you were kind of democratizing this data throughout the organization, right? It's not always easy to say, hey, there maybe is a gap in somebody else's area of the business, right? And then try to rally people together to make a better outcome. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it starts with my entire team gets the credit. Definitely, it starts with our auditors. They audit a lot of calls, a lot of interactions. So as they're doing that, we build assignments that we're not listening to just random phone calls. Like, you may do a percentage of calls for each agent, right? You may not get the insights you need behind that. So what we've done is when we look at our assignments, we actually look at a targeted approach as well. We look for areas of opportunity. So when we set up our assignments around business data, that's allowed us to get that type of efficiency and that type of insight into what's going on. So when we're listening to those calls, we're able to identify trends. Hey, look, we're seeing, we have this particular thing that we're looking for. We're seeing about 20% in that particular area as far as the moment is concerned. Our team is listening to those calls. They're giving feedback to their QC manager to say, hey, we're seeing some real trends with how we're handling certain things. Once that information is received by our QC manager, we're having a meeting. I have a weekly cadence. We sit down, we talk about where we are, areas of opportunity. Once that information is, once we kind of look into that, we understand the trends. I have another meeting with our directors and our senior management team, and we sit down and we talk through that information as well. And then we have a cadence where we'll say, okay, now we need to get some other stakeholders involved. If it affected or impacted another department, so we'll quickly set up a meeting or just get on the phone because we have that kind of relationship where we'll sit and talk. Hey, we just noticed this thing is happening in your area. And then they're able to take it and act on it as well. So it gives us that flexibility and it just allows us to act quickly and make adjustments on the fly. So, in collections, things are forever changing. The opportunities are forever changing. The needs are changing. So we have to have a product that's flexible to allow us to change with it. So once we identify something, if we need to put more reinforcement behind it, we can easily change an assignment to put more focus and listen to more interactions around that particular topic. So that's been very impactful for us.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that a little bit more, right? I think the nature of growing with automation is that you're going to get more honed in on specific types of insights, right? So your team's ability to not only leverage auto QA to drive, robust data on, the more objective things, the things that you really want to look for in your conversations, but then you're able to use our assignments feature, right, to hone in on those specific areas that you're saying is also data driven, right? You're saying if we see a moment that's at a higher rate, we're going to look at those calls, right? If we're missing a compliance or if we're, maybe there's an increase in complaints, you can actually assign out those types of interactions to your quality team and say, hey, let's go look at these. And that way your manual focus is very honed in and correlated to an outcome.
Correct. And that kind of leads us down the path where we talk about our objectives, which is to create a better customer experience and agent experience, because you can hear things from agents as well, right? They could be frustrated with the process or with the procedure, or they're scrambling to get information. So it says, okay, you know what, maybe we need to do a better job of putting that information in front of them in a more unique or faster way. So I know we're going to talk a little bit more about about Knowledge AI when we talk about next steps, but those are the things that impact the business. So it's important for us to have those experiences be sound at both levels. We have to make sure that our customers are having a good experience. If our agents are having a good experience, then the customer's going to have a good experience as well. So those 100%. Things go hand in hand.
100%. Yeah, the agent experience is so important, and I think it is always looked at through the lens of, hey, what are we going to do to coach to make them better? But there's a whole nother aspect of it, which is how can you make their jobs easier? How can you make their life easier? Right? What are the things that they're doing? Why are they taking so long to look up X, Y, and Z? And what can we do? And you mentioned it with the screen recording paired with the insights, right? You can see, okay, what are they actually spending time on? How can we improve the efficiency there so that they have it easier because I mean, we were both in the seat at one point. The amount of screens that you have, the amount of things that you have to do, oh my gosh, it's so overwhelming, and it's only increased, right? So I think that's a really key point. Just closing the loop on the collections piece, I think one thing what was really unique is coaching on those specific areas, right? And also adding them to your training to say, hey, these are maybe the areas that we want to focus on. Can you talk a little bit about how coaching, the coaching really needs to evolve when your insights evolve, right? I think the old manner of coaching is, hey, there's certain things on your quality form that you miss. Let's go talk about those items. But now, like you said, your team is looking at these trends in your manual using assignments, but then you also have all the trends from auto QA. So how do you take all of that and say, hey, we're going to coach on the focus areas, and can you talk about how the quartiles really helped you focus into the right people to coach on?
Yeah, I think you have to understand your KPIs. It starts there. You have to understand your KPIs. You have to have goals set around those. You have to have standards in place. I think once you have that, you can always look at trying to move the needle and improve the performance of your team. So I think it starts there with the KPIs. Then from there, what are the drivers behind the KPIs? What is it that we're doing on the phone well that's giving that end result? So I think for us, it's looking at that information. It's also having the ability for our managers to quickly, or our leaders to quickly be able to listen to calls. If we know we have an opportunity where we're not doing a good job of getting promises to keep, we can focus more on the closing aspect of the call. What are we saying? Are we really clear in making sure the customer understands what what they've committed to? Are we asking the right questions to make sure there's a solid arrangement? Those things all become very critical. So if I can go and look at, let's say I'm one repossession team within collections, and I'm focusing on improving conversion rate, I can quickly filter and look at every interaction where it's off repossession that we did not get a promise on. And then I could also look at negative sentiment and drill down into maybe taking tens of hundreds of thousands of calls and drilling down to a specific amount for my particular associate or within my business in general. And we can target that and then be able to give that feedback that's needed to our staff to make the improvements. It also allows our staff to go in as well. They have access to Observe AI as well in the UI. So if I'm having time to self-assess and manage my own success as well and try to make improvements, I can go in the system and identify my areas of opportunity. So I think not only are you giving those insights to the agents directly to be able to manage their outcome, it also is providing and equipping the managers with needed information to be able to make sure that the coaching that they're doing is meaningful. Because you can coach all day, but is it meaningful? Are you providing the right information to make your associate better or make your team better? That's where the difference is made.
Yeah, I think that's another super powerful point, right? You can coach all day, and I think the first thing you said, which is you have to know your KPI, right? You have to know your metrics. Like, what are you really driving? And I think so often quality processes were put in place to, really, protect from compliance, audit, process, right? So they're not really driving an outcome, right? But a lot of the contact center agents are measured on a certain outcome, right? And it's an interesting thing to not have those two things linked, right? So the ability to say, hey, we're going to look at collection rate, or we're going to look at, customer satisfaction, and, what are the things that are driving those, and correlate that. I think that's super powerful, and being able to hone in on it. And I think the bigger picture is what you talked about is a framework. We really established a framework to say, if there is another metric that we want to go and attack, or we want to go and improve, you have the same framework that you can utilize, right? And that's to your point of being flexible. We don't want to just do an ad hoc, hey, we did this one, data analysis, but it took, we had to wait for these people to do it, and it was a resource thing, right? Like, you don't want that. You want to build a framework for your organization so that anytime something else comes up, because you said things are going to change, it's constantly evolving, right? And just the economic state of everything, things are always going to be changing. So how can you remain flexible so that when something else comes up that's important, you have the same framework to go and apply there?
Right.
Yeah, love that. Another aspect, I think, and another benefit that we saw was the impact on average handle time as well, right? So just with some of the insights that we were able to provide and that your team was able to utilize, we looked at, with handle time, I think there's common things that the industry looks at, things like hold time violation, what's the silence, what's the dead air. And I think this was another great example of how your business was able to actually leverage the insight to go and make a change internally, right? Not necessarily within the Observe platform, but even just looking at your telephony system and saying, hey, you know what, there's maybe some different settings we can move here so that we can decrease our silence. And, I think that was a really unique aspect, and another way that just the democratization of data, right? Just giving it to the right people. And because your team is cross-functional, they're able to say, oh, this is really, helpful, that silence is really hurting us. Let's go and make this change. And then we saw, an 11% improvement. So really, really great there.
Yeah, it was a partnership. And one of the things that we did change, we recognized when we we migrated our phone system was after call work time, just allowing the staff enough time to finish wrapping up that call, whether it be notations, whether it be they need to send a notification for a case to be handled in a certain way. We had to give them that time, and I think we didn't realize we weren't giving enough time. So by doing that, we saw a lot of improvement in that as well. So it was very key. So and it was a partnership, and I don't think we realized it until we really started diving into the information as much as we did, and then we realized, okay, yeah, this is going to help us as well. So this is another example.
Another example, yeah. A lot of good metrics here. I think, it's always a good conversation when we're saying, hey, we're improving, efficiency, but we're not sacrificing quality, right? And you're improving your North Star KPIs like collections. I think that's really key. And it's hard to juggle all those always, right? Because you might not, you might move one, but then the others move in an opposite direction, right? So I think having a holistic picture and being able to say to your, the quartiles, I think really helped us because we're able to learn from what are people doing now in those top tiers that works, right? That's like, hey, this is the model. It's not something abstract that we're thinking of or we're coming up with. We know that this is happening today. So how can we apply that to the rest of the team?
Yeah, and when you look at, like I said, the focus was around promise to pay rate, trying to improve that. But as we did that, sometimes you'll see the sacrifice of if you have more promise or the meaningful promises, you may see your cap rate being lowered. And the thing I said that was important was not only did we see the spike in our conversion rate, we also saw the spike in our cap rate as well. So it lets us know we were making more good promises. And the average payment sizes were higher, so we're negotiating for more money as well, and able to help customers actually get out of their situation. So that's always a bonus. And we're doing it the right way, because you can improve performance, but you can be doing it the wrong way and not being within the guidelines of the regulators or your own organization. So that's important, to be able to move and improve, but do it the right way and still remain adherent and compliant to the things that we have to be adherent and compliant to. So that was important for us.
Yeah, because there's a whole nother mess of things that you could be running into if you're not adherent and compliant, right? That's not
that's correct.
What we want to run into. So, no, love that. All right, so when we look at, just transitioning a little bit, right? So when you look at all the efficiencies you've gained, right, in terms of post-interaction, all the things you've done with auto QA, you've gone through this transformation now of also, moving your quality team to focusing on really targeted areas of opportunity. And then you're really expanding on the insights and driving it to the rest of your business. All of this is happening after the interaction has occurred, right? So can you talk to us a little bit about how, there's kind of a plateau that you might hit, right, when it comes to post-interaction improvements and the need for real-time AI and how SFS is looking at utilizing this as a next step for continuing to improve the KPIs.
Yeah, I know real time. I'm excited about real time. That's actually that's what we have currently being piloted right now before we roll it into full production. But the thing that's going to give us is a better onboarding experience. To me, that's the first and foremost is going to be the biggest thing for us is when you have new associates that are out of training and they're on the phone and they're taking calls and they're trying to remember, you're going through all these screens and you're getting asked questions and you're trying to remember everything you need to be doing on the call. It's good to have that real-time guidance to say, hey, customer just said this. Here's some key points that you can focus in on, or throughout the flow of your call, make sure you hit these marks, or make sure you're saying these things to the customer, right? You always want to make sure you greet them in the right way. State your name. Are you asking for what's due? Are you asking questions when you hear them have concerns? If you're talking too fast, we can give them that information real time to say, hey, slow down. You're over talking to customer. It's very valuable, especially it helps them gain more confidence, and it creates a better experience for the agent and for the customer again. So to me, that's another product that's going to help us with our objectives of trying to have a better customer or agent experience by implementing that. And the thing I'm excited for as well is post-call summaries. Being able to have our call summarized. One thing we talk about is consistency in notations. We listen to phone calls, but you also want to make sure that your system of record reflects what actually happened on the call. So, you have some associates that may feel certain things are more important than others. It's great to have AI listening that can give you post-call summary that you can put into your system of record to say, this is consistently what's happening on your calls, and have that insight from that as well. So that's going to be very valuable, and I can't wait till we have that fully deployed and implemented as well.
Yeah. Moving into real time is such a different ball game, and the new hire training, I think, is a very key point of emphasis for all customers that utilize it, because the training timeline of that's usually how training teams are measured, is how can we get folks on the floor taking calls into production, but the more important metric is that ramp to proficiency, right? You can get somebody on the floor, but when are they actually proficient enough to handle a call end to end? And with real time, they have the most proficient, flow in front of them, right? They have the ideal flow. They have the dynamic prompts, to your point, where customer objects, they're able to handle that conversation in real time. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about knowledge AI as well, and how it can be linked to a knowledge base, right? So it's referencing the right things, but that ramp to proficiency is really key. And what's, I think, even more powerful is that you have the data from post-interaction on what works well to improve collections, right? So now it's a lot simpler for you when you're building in the experiences in real time to say, well, we want to include these 2 or 3 things because we know our top agents do it, right? So we can easily include that in, and we want to, and we can drive those behaviors, right? So you can really improve your overall, even your new hires come in operating at a higher level than prior classes. So I think that's great. And the after call work, that's just, I think that the example I heard once from someone was, some agents take notes like Dr. Seuss, and some take them like Shakespeare. So it's like, you never know. You never know what you're going to get.
Exactly.
And I think that's where it is really good to have a model that you all can calibrate and say, no, these are the things we want in every single call, right? These are the entities we want. These are the things that are important to our business to capture, to continue to do that. So I think that's a beautiful thing. But when it came to the dynamic prompts, right, and indexing off your knowledge base, can you talk a little bit about knowledge AI and what excites you there?
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to get that one implemented. We have a lot. Like I said, we've been growing very fast. So actually we're in the process of implementing a new call model as well in our department. So with that, that's a lot of change. So there's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of stumbling, trying to perfect the call model by our staff. So that puts a lot of pressure on your frontline managers. You really want your management team focusing in on getting them comfortable, building their confidence, making sure that they can solve customers' problems, right? Asking the right questions to help get those insights to help them with their situation. But for us, Knowledge AI, I think it was going to take a lot of pressure off of our managers, because if you're on the phone and you're looking for key information, at a keystroke, I can type in a question or ask a keyword or phrase, and it'll pop that information right from the repository. That's going to be very critical for our team. And I think that's also going to help when it comes to onboarding, and it's going to help our existing staff as they transition into our new call model, because we can reinforce the model not only through the real-time agent assist, but through Knowledge AI. If they have questions on the call model, or, hey, I'm in this particular part of my flow, where do I go next? It'll automatically present that information to them. So that gives them a lot more power at their disposal to be able to help that customer, because it's all about trying to be comfortable with the conversation, let it be natural, but also get the information you need right away without telling the customer, you mind holding for a moment while I get that answer for you. So, you know, you don't want to do that if you can avoid it. You want to just put that information in front of your staff so they can answer those questions and feel confident about it. So we're looking for those things out of having the knowledge AI once we get that implemented there. So
love that. And the customization piece, I think, is huge, right? And we've hit on it a couple of times throughout this conversation, but you know, with Observe, you know, you have the flexibility to say, hey, you know, just give some guidance here, or maybe be a little bit more prescriptive here, right? I think a lot of folks tend to think, okay, it has to be one way or the other, right? But you know, different conversations need different things, right? You might want to be more prescriptive in some. You might want to be more, you know, hey, just here's some guidelines, right, of how to go through it. Especially when you have, you know, tenured folks versus new folks, things like that, right? So that customization becomes really key.
Yeah, and you also want to make sure that your staff is getting the right coachings at all times. So the one thing I love as well is when we're actually listening to the interactions and we're providing the evaluations, and then we're setting up our coaching sessions. You know, from every level of management, I can go and look and see on each of our teams, how much time are we actually spending on coaching them? How much time are we spending on development? What are the key areas that we're focusing on with them? What are we focused on as a department? What are some things we could probably reinforce through refresher training? Having that information allows you to do things a lot quicker and see things a lot faster. So those are a lot of the gains that we've gained from the product and the UI. So also when it comes to evaluations, I can look at a glance and see from our management team how many evaluations are being done at any given moment. We have a report that we've created in the reporting engine that goes out daily and weekly that says, okay, this is how many evaluations are being done. So if we see that we're not getting the right attention to one of our associates, we can quickly act on it and say, hey, what's going on? You know, why are we giving that coaching to this particular agent that may need assistance? So I love it. I love everything that we put together, and I can't wait for what's to come, because I think we're just getting started. So it's a really great story of the natural evolution of, you know, understanding what's in your calls, finding a mechanism and a framework to improve them, and then putting that into, you know, real time, and then maybe even eventually right before the call as well, right, and making those enhancements. So it's just it's a full connected you know, a full connected life cycle, and the way that you all have approached it, I think, has been fantastic. And I think with real time, it's going to be really interesting to see, you know, not only from the new hire perspective, but like you said, just those different conversation types, and then being able to index off of certain knowledge articles. It's going to make the agent's life a lot easier, right? Which is, I think, you know, a huge aspect of driving good customer satisfaction is how are you impacting, you know, the agent themselves. So love to hear that. I know we're getting close to time here, so I do want to make sure we leave some time for some Q&A. We actually have a couple of questions that came in, so I'll this first one's actually for you, Lamar. So it's around auto QA. So when did you go live with auto QA, and how long have you been evaluating your conversations? Auto QA we implemented. Let me go back and remember. It's been some time now. We started the project in 2022, and I think by the time we implemented, it was probably, if not 22, early 23, a couple of years now. And I know we went through our first wave of figuring out which questions could be auto QA, right? And then we did another evaluation not that long ago, where we were able to take more metadata and be able to actually auto QA more questions. And, you know, I know that process wasn't easy, and I'm sorry for a programmer that was assisting us. We kept saying, we don't think these questions will be able to be auto QA'd, and we were proven wrong. So it was actually, it was good. It was good to see, and I was glad that we were able to do that. So a couple of years now, we've been doing the auto QA. And it's been,
that actually brings up a good point. You know, can you talk a little bit about the calibration, right? Because I think there is always a lot of uneasiness when you moving into automation. But talk about the ability and Observe to, you know, calibrate the machine with your own experts in house, and be able to say, you know, hey, you know, our conversations are done this way, right? And this is how the AI should actually be scoring. You know, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think once we start putting things together, we start looking at scoring. we started seeing, we were able to take our QA team and actually have them evaluate those same calls and be able to give insights to, hey, this question isn't quite answering, the auto QA is not working 100% of the time. So as we were going back and forth and we were saying, well, these keywords or these phrases are the reason why, you guys were able to go back and say, let's make some modifications to this particular moment, or let's make some modifications to this particular question. And as we were doing that, then we would start evaluating again. And it became a weekly process. We would evaluate. Once we felt like we got the question to at least a 90% success rate or accuracy rate, we felt it was ready to be deployed. So we kind of did that back and forth and just partnered, and we would tweak the moments and make adjustments as needed, or create other exclusions out of the moment to be able to get that question answered correctly. And that was really the cadence for that. So it was very beneficial. The first time we went through it, it was different, right? It took time. Yeah. But it was funny, the second time we went through it, I felt like an expert. I'm like, well, when do we have our session where you guys actually give us the questions and we start evaluating? So the process became easy over time. So
yeah,
it's been
love
great.
Love that. And the accuracy you're able to achieve, right? Getting over 90%. I think a lot of folks, would think that's maybe not attainable from the way that the complexity of their conversations and things like that. But, it was an amazing thing to see for your team. And I think, your subject matter experts paired with, all the different conditional logic you can use and observe, and, not only the moments, but the metadata, to your point, and, you're looking for multiple things in one call. I think it really helped us drive that automation. So that was incredible. I have another question in here. Do you have to be extremely technical to use Observe AI products or the products mentioned?
No, I consider myself to be somewhat technical, but not extremely technical. When we first started, it was myself and one of our business analysts. We took on that role initially, along with our QC team. But when it came to the configuration, it was really learning from you guys and partnering. And we did some configurations as well. It was easy to do. You using Analyze helped you also, as you were looking to try to build a moment. I could go and type in keywords and say, okay, what kind of matches am I getting, or what kind of results am I getting? Listen to those calls. It's not quite working. Let me tweak it a little bit. It was very easy to build and configure the system. And now we actually have it to where it's really, I've kind of taken a step back and allowed our business analyst to actually, he's our SME. He does the training for our new hires. When we talk and we need to do any configuration changes, he's doing that work for us. And we also now have my collection QC manager, who's awesome, and she's learned the system. So they actually now partner together when we need to create new assignments or new moments based on our conversations. And it's easy for them to pick up and learn. So no, you don't have to be technical to be able to use the product.
Love that. And actually, the last question I have here is actually about resources. And how did you dedicate resources to the Observe configuration? So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and also how it evolved, right? Like how you might have had one plan and then you kind of evolved into your.
Initially I thought I would be managing it along with my business analyst, and then I think it evolved over time. We started getting our QC team. They were learning the platform as well at the time. Then we got on to where we were not only looking at collections, but we had our customer care team also using the product as well. So they gained us somebody that can configure the system, but it doesn't take many people. We have one dedicated person, and they don't have to spend all day doing it, configuring, checking things, creating assignments, making adjustments as needed. Also have our QC managers that are part of that process as well, where they can help if need be. So it doesn't take a huge team to do it, but I value actually doing it myself and learning, because that's when we really learn to understand the power of building and configuring if you do it the right way. So I think actually doing it myself was really insightful for me to understand and where we were at and where we could go with the product. So, and all the products. So.
Love it. Awesome. Well, I think we're at time. So, thanks so much, Lamar and Maddie. I'll hand it back to you.
Awesome. Great conversation. Thank you both. And thank you everybody for attending. For the resources, we have our Stellantis case study there, as well as a link to our next webinar, which will be Demystifying the Shift. It's our next Impact series on Thursday, May 22nd. But thank you everybody for joining. The recording will be sent out shortly, and I hope you have a great day.
All right. Thank you all, and have a good one.
Bye. Thank you all.